Tiny.
B-Site and Flashpoint announced the final NA Ignition event on August 26th to 28th, at least the one that's publicly announced. Pop Flash. This also begs the question, obviously, $50,000 prize pool. There are the 8 teams involved. Obviously, you will see one logo there and be like, there's one logo there. Wait a minute. Is that Dignitas?
Oh.
Dignitas. What is Emily Dignitas? That's a Dignitas logo. By God, that's Dignitas's music.
It is. It is.
What do we make of this, and what do we know? Is there anything that's out there right now? Dignitas.
Emily, I mean, you'd have to. I have opinions on like Flashpoint in general. I haven't heard anything about Dignitas.
So let's hear about
the announcement of the actual team.
Wow.
That was the first time I'd heard about it. So you'd have to go to Tyler for that.
So before we get to Dignitas as a team, let's get your thoughts on the Flashpoint tournament in general.
Well, I mean, I'm glad to see because like previously all of the events, like I think FaZe's event was definitely the best for the Ignition series that I've seen. In terms of, like Tyler said, the co-streams, the overall tournament organization, stuff like that. But this is kind of the end of Ignition series pretty much, right? And it was cool. It's cool to see another tournament organizer come in and like have a tournament, because I feel like even with FaZe holding tournaments, even with T1, obviously, and Nerd Street Gamers, like they put a ton of time and effort into organizing these things. I'm not trying to take away from that, but it always kind of felt like Riot was still there, like hosting these tournaments to me a bit. Like they were kind of organizing the thing from behind the scenes. And this to me is like, okay, we're going to allow like another actual tournament organizer to take this entirely over and see what they can do. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Flashpoint brings from like a production value standpoint specifically. Having watched some of their CS tournaments, their shoulder content is really awesome. They do a really good job with it. So I'm super curious to see how they handle this tournament, and I hope it kind of sets a standard for tournaments to come just based on what I've seen from them in CS.
Things I just want to point out about that before we dive into Dig. One, I'm actually really happy to see that they're opening the funnel a little bit for B-Site, which is the parent organization that owns Pop Flash and Flashpoint, because Flashpoint was you were only allowed to participate if you qualified or if you were a partner team and paid a $2 million franchise fee. And the biggest criticism of Flashpoint as a result was that the teams participating in Flashpoint were bad. That was the criticism. Other than like MIBR and Gen.G, basically the entire competition was crap. Everybody else that was good played in ESL Pro League. Mad Lions is solid too, so give a little bit of a nod. But nonetheless, they kind of opened that funnel. T1 is not a partner team of Flashpoint at this point. Sentinels is not a partner team of Flashpoint at this point. They're both in this tournament, right? Like, so that's exciting because they are some of the best teams in the game. And then the other thing, to Emily's point, like, I don't always agree with Thorin. I don't always agree with Monte Cristo. What I do have to tip hat to them for a little bit, though, is the fact that, like, Flashpoint's content, despite how terrible the competition was, the content was very, very
insanely good.
Very good. And I understand they're not going to have the same level of studio access they will because of COVID. But nonetheless, I'm excited to see them be able to do as much as they can while socially distanced and at home for this tournament, because I think that's the next step in Valorant tournaments is sort of like shoulder content around the actual competition itself.
I'm very excited for Pop Flash because way back, like one of our first Valorant shows, I said tournaments are coming. Big organizers, like established organizers like Valorant, they want to invest in Valorant. And Flashpoint was one of those organizers. They were trying to put on a very big tournament in the beta phase. I believe it was supposed to be scheduled at the end of May, but as we all know, at the end of May, that was right when the game got its servers cut off and the game went into dark mode before the official release. So Riot didn't sign off on it. They didn't get the green light, but finally, after months of trying to get a tournament in Valorant, they now have the final and fourth Ignition Series tournament. And I'm excited for not only seeing Dignitas' debut, I'm excited to see that we're going to see a lot of new casters. DDK, who was kind of the star of the FaZe Decline Invitational with Sean Gayers, they did an excellent job casting. I just want to shout out those two. They have, I think we've had a lot of good casting in Valorant. Simo, Golden Boy, A lot of really good casting. I just think DDK and Sean Gayers were excellent. I just want to give them a personal shout out, and I'm very happy to see DDK at the tournament. But we're also going to see Potter and Doa. Doa, our guy, who we've had on shows before. He's a commentating legend. You know, him, Monte Cristo over in South Korea with the OGN Champions days, obviously then transferred to Overwatch League when that started. Now he's getting his first chance in Valorant. I'm excited to see Doa casting Valorant because he's one of the best personalities you have in the commentating game. So
Yeah.
we're not only saying the debut of James House, but I'm very excited to see more DDK, and I'm excited to see Potter and Doa both have their first chances commentating the game on a big level because we're talking about all these like players, right? Like, oh, these players are trying to get to this upper echelon. They're trying to make a name for themselves. These organizations are trying to get really good first impressions. It's the same with casting, right? There are so many people who want to cast this game right now. Every tournament for these guys is a tournament in themselves to see if they can break through with the fans and if they can get to that next level. And I think this is the big chance for Doa and Potter both to say, hey, we are two of the best casters in Valorant. We need more events. And I think DDK and Sean Gayers at FaZe Clan Invitational prove that they are two of the best casters right now in the scene.
Can I